Dinner was already laid when we entered, but something about the room set it apart from an ordinary family supper. Not in anything I could point to, really. Everything was in its place, the table properly set, the service laid out as it should be, and yet the staff moved with a care that did not belong to routine, their attention fixed just enough to suggest they awaited something. A kind of expectation held just beneath the surface, too restrained to show itself plainly, but present enough I felt it the moment I crossed the threshold. Perhaps it was only that I'd been away so long that I noticed the strangeness of it now. Or maybe it was the candlelight, placed at the centre of the table, where it was not usually kept. Whatever the cause, it marked the evening as something different, even if no one acknowledged it. The last of the plates were being cleared from the table when Christian spoke, turning slightly towards my grandfather. "Sir, before the next course, I wish to let you know that Grace and I will be in London next weekend for the Cup match at Wembley. We will stay with the Wentworths of Mayfair." He gave a small shrug, as though what became of me was his to determine and no one else's. In fact, he'd always done that, even as a boy, and I'd long since ceased to question it. It seemed a suitable return, something public enough to be proper, without placing too much upon her at once. Grandfather set his cup aside and nodded. "Very good," he said. "I am glad of it." It was not much in itself, and yet I understood clearly that having the burden of what was to be done with me taken from his hands was something he didn't regret in the least. It was not lost on me how little time my grandparents might have left compared to what had been taken from us. And that, more than anything, made me grateful to Christian. Not only for bringing me home, but for seeing what must be done once I was here. For all his severity, he had a clearer understanding of what family required than most. As the last of the desserts were put before us, Grandfather raised his hand just enough to signal, his finger shifting subtly towards Christian in a movement so slight I don't think anyone else marked it. But Mr. Langsley did. He answered it with a quick nod as he stepped back from the table, crossing to the sideboard where the footman stood arranging the service. He spoke to him in a low voice, and the man turned at once, his attention fixed on Grandfather. My eyes moved past him, and hidden behind the rest of the service, I caught sight of the neck of a champagne bottle, already opened and waiting. And then Grandfather spoke before anyone else could notice what I had. "Before we go on, I should like to say something." It was not the sort of thing that would have startled anyone at the table, and yet it settled over the room all the same, not because of what he said, but because he said it then. "As you have all long understood, there would come a time when Christian would step into my place in the management of Blackmere. That has never been in question." And those words alone had Christian sitting a touch straighter and holding his breath beside me. I had no doubt of his feelings concerning our union, not after all the years he spent in search of me. But Blackmere was as much a part of him as his own hand. I understood very well that there was nothing he wanted more than to see it properly his, not merely held in trust for his wife and children. So I found his fingers beneath the tablecloth so he'd know how happy I was for him when my grandfather said, "And now that they are returned to us for good, I shall begin stepping away from the administration of Blackmere, and Christian will move into my place." The applause came at once, and just as quickly, Grandfather raised his hand, bringing it to a close without a word. "But more than that," he said, "I am not blind to what has been done in the name of this house. Christian has served Blackmere beyond what was required of him, and with a devotion I will not overlook. It was not praise in the way others might have given it, not something meant to please the room, and yet it carried more weight for the restraint of it, enough that I felt Christian's hand tremble beneath mine. For his unwavering loyalty, and for returning our Gracie to us, I name Christian the Warden of Blackmere." I'd never seen Christian caught off guard so. Not once in all the years I knew him had he come upon a moment he didn't have an answer for. Yet he gave nothing now, no word, no movement, only that stillness beside me that held more than any reply might have done. His mouth parted as though to speak, but whatever he meant to say would not follow. The clapping came again, and I saw the colour rise along his ears, a betrayal of what he'd never admit to. He didn't smile, or so much as shift in his chair. And still I knew it reached him, because it went where everything of consequence did, straight to the part of him that belonged to Blackmere and would never be anything else. His parents didn't hide their feelings about it, though. His mother clapped with the rest, though she made a poor attempt of it as she wiped her tears away. And Henry had never been a man given to display, but he was smiling, and I thought I'd never seen him do so before. Before Christian could sit there any longer with the whole of the room upon him, I gave his hand a squeeze beneath the table, where no one could see it, to remind him he must answer them. He lowered his head towards grandfather, and I realised not that he had nothing to say, but that none of what he'd prepared would come to him. Every word he'd no doubt practised for such a moment abandoned him, which I couldn't help but find a little amusing, knowing how carefully he would have planned it all. "Thank you, sir," he finally said, "for the trust you place in me, in both your granddaughter and your house. I swear I will see Blackmere kept as it ought to be." Grandfather lifted his hand and bent his fingers towards Mr. Langsley, who brought the glasses forward as the champagne bottle was set among them. "A glass for the Warden of Blackmere," he said. The champagne was poured about the table as the conversation resumed in hushed voices, and it was then that Christian finally turned to me. He had it all back in hand, of course. Anyone looking would have seen nothing in him to remark upon, nothing out of place. But I knew him too well for that. I understood the effort it took to hold himself as he was, when what he'd just been given would have had any other man grinning like a fool. "Well, the Honourable Christian Ashcombe, Captain and Warden of Blackmere," I said. "I am very pleased to make your acquaintance." At that, he let out a short laugh and caught my hand, bringing it to his mouth just as the glasses arrived. Grandfather lifted his glass to Christian, and the rest followed, the table turning towards him, to Christian and to Blackmere. And then Christian raised his as well. "To Blackmere," we all answered. He had spent his life standing just short of it, bound to the house in every way but the one that mattered to him. And now there was no distance left. What he had always meant to be to Blackmere, he was at last.